Okay, time for a new video, and whether you are somebody new to my channel or you are returning to my channel to watch this video, it is greatly appreciated. As always, I'm filming this video in one go, so if I stumble over my words moving forwards, apologies about that, and also apologies if the quality of this video is fairly poor as well, if there's any lag, anything like that at all. Sadly, it can't be helped, and hopefully it's not too much of an issue for you. This is yet another Eurovision related video here on my channel, and today I am going to be talking a little bit about the songs that have finished last at the Eurovision Song Contest in the grand final between 2014 and 2024. As always, you're welcome to let me know your thoughts on anything I discuss in today's video by leaving a comment down below. And as always, there are links in the description to my other social media pages. Check them out if you so wish. So last time out, I briefly discussed the winners at the ESC over the past decade and spoke about whether the right song or one of the right songs came out on top every year over the past decade, and the answer was yes. Most of the time, pretty much, one of the right songs triumphed. But in terms of the songs finishing last, does one of the right songs come last, if you see what I mean? Does the weakest song in the grand final every year end up bottom of the scoreboard? I think the answer is no. Occasionally we do have a surprise, this year being one such example. And yes, on the day of the final, there are a few songs we know challenging for victory, and we know a few songs that will probably finish last. But I think it's sometimes harder to predict who is going to finish bottom of the pile in comparison to predicting the winner. Anyway, let's go back to 2014. This could be a very messy video once again. And finishing last in Copenhagen 10 years ago was France. Twin with Moustache. This was a male group, all-male group, and Moustache itself, obviously quite a humorous song, trying to tickle the funny bone of Europe, I guess, and not really succeeding. It was colourful, it was vibrant, there was a little bit of choreography, this one moment where the lead singer tried to take a selfie, which didn't really work. I think it stood out because it was so in your face and unashamedly silly, I guess. But for some reason, Europe wasn't really in the mood for this type of thing, which is interesting because I'm looking at Belarus, song 2 on the night. This was Cheesecake by Teo, you may well remember it. And you could say that was a somewhat humorous, tongue-in-cheek, rather silly type of track. And yet, Belarus finished 16th with 43 points. France finished last with 2. And if we take a look at the exact results here, France were last with the jury, last with the public. In the jury vote, France's points came from Sweden and Finland. And I don't know why I'm saying jury vote and public vote, because of course it was smushed together back in 2014. This was before the current voting system was implemented. Do I think the French entry was the weakest of the 2014 grand final? Not really. I'm looking at San Marino, who finished 2 places higher. This was Valentina Monetta, the returning Valentina Monetta, with maybe her 3rd Eurovision entry in a row for San Marino, and arguably her weakest, you could say, although the social media track that she had in 2012, whatever it was called, that wasn't brilliant. But this was definitely poorer than her entry in Malmö 2013, which didn't qualify. 14 points, okay, not much, but this was really quite dull if you ask me. And the fact that France, which definitely stood out a lot more, finished below this San Marino effort, I don't know, that was quite surprising at the time. And from what I remember, most people didn't mind the French track at the time. They could tolerate it, even if it wasn't really their thing. Nowadays, I don't really know if people like this more than dislike it, but I don't think it was the weakest song. So I have to say I disagree. I think the wrong song finished last in the 2014 grand final. It certainly wasn't one of the strongest. Let's put it that way. But I think every grand final needs a song like this. A song that is clearly not to be taken too seriously, doesn't have much of a serious message perhaps, does stand out in terms of its colour and vibrancy and energy. I mean, Finland sort of ticked the right boxes in that department in Malmö last month. But France, yes, for some reason it didn't connect with an audience whatsoever back in 2014. It was a jokey entry that fell flat on its face. Let's write it down here in my notebook. France 2014. Not a bad song, but I can't say I've listened to it much over the years. Now, somebody on my community post a while back said that I should discuss songs that received 0 points, songs that finished last overall. So I will briefly do that as well, because why not? Moldova were last overall in 2014, and I do think this was justified is the wrong word, but it wasn't really a shock at all. I didn't see any support for this one at the time. Christina Scarlett finished last in semi-final 1 in Copenhagen with Wild Soul. 13 points, not much to the performance. Certainly not the catchiest song. All fairly vanilla, I suppose you could say. I don't disagree with it. Last in semi-final 2 was Georgia. That wasn't a great entry either. Can't argue with the results there. I do think forgettable songs that people aren't really talking about, we know that they're probably going to finish towards the bottom. But as I said a few minutes ago, occasionally there is a spanner in the works. Occasionally we do get a song struggle that perhaps we just did not see struggling at all, and Norway is a good example of that from this year. But we move on to Vienna 2015. So did the right song finish last 9 years ago? Well, in the final, 2 songs received 0 points, but if we're being really specific about it, Germany finished last instead of Austria because Germany were later on in the running order. This was the Makes for Austria, the host nation, I Am Yours, 0 points. I believe this is the only time a host nation has finished with 0 points, but don't quote me on that. Whereas Germany were represented by Anne-Sophie with Black Smoke. And this was maybe the start of Germany's downfall at the Eurovision Song Contest, because they haven't truly recovered since, you could say. The Austrian track, there was a national final. Don't really remember anything about it. The Makes, an all-male group. I don't think they've released much music over the past few years, but they have had a few minor hits in their homeland before they did Eurovision as well, and one album. I Am Yours is a fairly slow song. It is a slow burner. Muted lighting, piano on fire, fairly soulful in tone, I guess. Quite relaxing. It was slap bang in the middle of the running order pretty much. It was a nice change of pace, but it was forgettable. And people, I assume, just forgot about this as soon as it was over and done with. And that is fatal. It really is. If there's not something about your song to keep people invested, then you are in trouble. And it's not just ballads. Up-tempo songs can struggle with this as well. We know that. As for Germany, Anne-Sophie, well, this was a bit of a surprise. I don't think anybody predicted this to really struggle. She is 33, from London, and she's released 2 albums and several singles, although not for a few years. Black Smoke was co-written by Ella Eyre, who has had some success as a musician here in the UK, absolutely. Black Smoke was a sort of sultry, sensual, slinky sort of number. If I remember correctly, she had her back turned away from the audience to begin with. White, black and gold lighting. It was all fairly classy stuff. Why did people not really get on board with this one? I don't know. I can understand Austria finishing last. 0 points is harsh. It's always harsh. But then Eurovision is a cruel game, as I've said before. Germany coming last is a bit of a surprise. I'm looking here at the results. France, that didn't really stand out too much and was on second. The UK had Electro Velvet, which was a shocking moment for the UK at Eurovision. Poland's entry is probably the dullest song I've ever heard, full stop. So do I think Germany deserved to finish last? No. Do I think the right song finished last? No. No, I don't. I think Poland's entry was arguably a lot weaker. The UK's entry just wasn't good enough. Hungary's entry was fairly dull as well. Low points for a lot of songs in 2015 because the top 3 sucked a lot of the points from different countries. Yeah, so Austria 2015, I'm going to put that there, and Germany 2015 I am going to put there. That's not a bad song, Black Smoke. I've not really listened to it a great deal over the years, but it's not a bad song, and this is the thing. Not bad songs usually end up last. It's not often the case where a really duff entry finishes bottom of the pile, and then you've got loads of people saying, well, we all saw that coming a mile away. That's not often the case. Moving on to 2016 now in Stockholm, and it was Germany finishing last again, was it not? This was Jamie Lee with Ghost, song 10 on the night, just 11 points for this, and this was when the new voting system was introduced. Taking a look at the split results, last with the jury, 24th of 26 with the public. In the jury vote, Germany's 1 point came from Georgia, of all places, and then from the public, Jamie Lee received 2 from Austria and 8 from neighbouring Switzerland. Now, I think the reason why Germany finished last, or one of the reasons why Germany finished last in 2016, was, interestingly enough, not because of the song or the singer, but the outfit, which seems like such a trivial thing to mention, but I think it did play a part in why Germany didn't get a lot of love at the time. You may well remember Jamie Lee, I think she was only about 18 or 19 at the time, she was wearing this outfit that didn't go with the song whatsoever. And she had this contraption on her head full of sort of soft toys. That's what it looked like. Big fan of K-pop. And she was expressing herself through her outfit, which I don't have a problem with. It just didn't match this song at all. This fairly slow, meandering sort of effort that doesn't really build up to much. Now, I don't mind Ghost. I think it's actually in my top 10 of 2016, but I haven't listened to it much over the years, and I can absolutely understand why it finished last. So I am inclined to say that one of the right songs finished bottom of the pile in 2016, because I'm looking at the other entries. I thought the grand final was particularly strong. The Czech Republic, the UK, Croatia, they were all just above Germany in the results. 11 points is very low, but it was forgettable. There's that word again, forgettable. If there's nothing about your song that's really gripping people right away, perhaps, you could be in a spot of bother. And unfortunately, Jamie Lee, who has only released one album and is still only 26 years of age, she came bottom of the final. A real shame. As for the semi-finals, last overall, this is absolutely disgraceful, but last overall in 2016 was Estonia. This was Jüri Putzmann with Play. He was last in semi-final 1 with 24 points, and a lot of people thought this was going to do really well, including myself. I really liked it, still really like it. I think it's my number 5 or 6 of 2016. The performance wasn't great. It was a little bit on the creepy side, the way that he was looking down the camera, and then that magic trick with the card. They went for a sort of classy look, very sort of aura of mystery about him, if you see what I mean. It didn't quite work. I think I preferred the national final performance slightly more. But even so, last overall in the 2016 competition. That was really surprising, and still is quite surprising. So I have to say the wrong song finished last overall. In terms of 0 points, well, nobody did in semi-final 1, nobody did in semi-final 2, but in the final, with the public, the Czech Republic finished last. The curse of being on second, Gabriela Gunčíková with I Stand. Beautiful song, beautiful performer, flowers all over the backdrop, gorgeous ballad. Don't think many people saw this coming, but that's what happened. 0 points from the public. A real shame. I disagree with it. So, long story short, Germany finishing last. I don't disagree with that. Czech Republic last with the public. I disagree with that. And Estonia last overall. I absolutely disagree with that one as well. I just have to go back to 2015 here, because I didn't mention who was last overall there, which was Switzerland. That was Melanie René with Time to Shine. Semi-final 2, just 2 points for that, I believe. I haven't got it up in front of me now. I think Switzerland sent the wrong song in 2015. Time Bell were there in the national final. Of course, they would represent Switzerland a few years later in Kiev. But yeah, Melanie René won the national final instead. Time to Shine, couple of drummers, Smoke Machine, I think, at one point. It wasn't that great. Was it the worst song? The weakest song of 2015? I don't think so. You had San Marino there. Finland were there as well in semi-final 1 with that very short, angsty number that they had. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I didn't love it though. So, clearly a lot of people agreed with me at the time. We move on to 2017 in Kyiv. And Portugal won by an absolutely crushing margin, and I discussed that song in my previous video. But last in the final wasn't Germany. They finished one place higher. It was actually Spain. Manel Navarro with Do It For Your Lover. I'm just going to write Germany 2016 here. Manel Navarro, yes. Well, everybody remembers him because his voice broke hitting that big note just before the final third of the song, and that's a real shame because that is what most people remember about him and indeed the performance in the grand final. The song itself was a bit controversial because in the Spanish national selection you had Mirella with Contigo, and she was expected to win it quite comfortably, but it went to a sort of tie-break situation if I remember, and the jury, for some inexplicable reason even to this day, decided that this was the better option, and then it finished last. What a surprise. Very repetitive, going for a sort of light-hearted, summery feel, which, you know, I could appreciate. But all in all, this was just a very weak song. And to be honest, it felt more suited to junior Eurovision than the adult competition. As for Manel, he is now 28 years of age, released one album, several singles, including with Mickey, who represented Spain in 2019, and Joust, who represented Norway in 2017 as well. This was arguably the weakest song of 2017. I don't know many people who've ranked this highly. I don't have it ranked highly. It's fairly forgettable. And as this is, as I just said, a fairly light-hearted, summery sort of tune, the fact that this didn't stand out is a fatal flaw, and really goes a long way to explaining why Spain finished bottom of the pile in 2017. I'm looking at Germany, that wasn't brilliant either. Ukraine's host entry, O Torvald with Time, that wasn't fantastic. Poland wasn't brilliant. But I don't disagree. So let me just make a note here. So 2014, I disagree with that. 2015, I partially agree with who finished last there. 2016, I agree. 2017, I have to say that I sort of agree. I'm surprised by the way this is going so far. I thought it was going to be disagreements left, right and centre, but no, not so far. I'm going to put Spain 2017 there. Not a brilliant entry, not one of Spain's best, it must be said. Now, if we take a look at the semi-finals, last overall it was San Marino. Valentina Monetta was back, this time with Jimmy Wilson. Spirit of the Night, 1 point. 1 point. And for the record, that 1 point came from the German public. So there you go. 0 points from the jury in semi-final 2, and 17th out of 18 countries with the public, because Malta got a 0 in that semi-final from the viewers. That was Claudia Faniello finally getting the chance to represent her country at Eurovision with Breathlessly. Fairly forgettable stuff. Blue lighting, her face on the backdrop. She was in a white dress, if I remember, something like that. Sounded pretty good. Not a whole lot of movement to it. Over before it began, really. You knew that this was not going to qualify well in advance of Eurovision 2017 taking place. 0 points, very harsh, but then again, not much of a shock. As for semi-final 1, was there a 0 points there? No, but Latvia received just 1 from the jurors. That was Triana Park, and from what I remember about that song, a lot of Eurovision fans really enjoyed it. But it fell flat on its face at Eurovision and did not receive much love at all. So yes, let's move swiftly on, shall we, to 2018. I feel like I'm missing out lots of bits and pieces here, but I do want this video to be relatively quick. This was Lisbon, of course. Just waiting for it to load up here. Here we go. Last in the final was Portugal. My God. What a disgrace. This was the host nation's entry. Claudia Pascoal and Isaura, who wrote the song about her grandmother, O Jardim, the Garden, last with 39 points, which is not a bad score really for a song cropping up the table. Did this song deserve to finish last? No, it did not. So I completely disagree with this one, I really do. However, again, I'm looking at some of the other songs. Finland really struggled, perhaps surprisingly so. That was Sara Aalto with Monsters. Was that weaker? If I'm taking off my biased cap here, no, Monsters was better. Storm for the UK, was that really better than Portugal's entry? Probably not. Spain's entry to Canción, I don't know about that. Serbia, 113 points, Portugal 39. That's unbelievable. I just thought that this was a great performance. I've spoken about it before. I've spoken about all of these songs before. So intimate. But perhaps because it was such a big arena, such a big stage, it didn't quite work in the way it should have done. Isaura, of course, entering the picture about 2/3 of the way in and then clearing off again. Claudia Pascual, sounding great, pink hair, absolutely fantastic. This song grew on me so much in the build-up to Eurovision 2018. It was the first time I'd ever really paid attention to the Portuguese national final, FDC, and that was purely because Portugal were the host nation that year. So I wanted to see what they were potentially going to bring to the table on home soil. And I thought it was a pretty strong national final, and this was the song that came out on top. Still love it now. Absolutely. And I remember a lot of Eurovision fans were so disappointed that people just didn't vote for this in big numbers. I thought the juries would really appreciate this, but not to be. Taking a look at the split results, Portugal were 25th of 26 countries with the jury and 25th of 26 countries with the public as well. Dear me, what a great shame. What a great shame. In the jury vote, Portugal did receive a 6 from Ireland, which is very nice to see, and from the public, 8 from France and 10 from Switzerland. The Swiss public gave Portugal 10 for some very, very odd reason. What is that all about? Anyway, very, very nice. Completely disagree with it being last, but at the same time, I can sort of understand why it finished last, because a lot of people will have watched this on the night and found it incredibly boring. But there we go. Last overall in 2018 was not Georgia. I think it was Iceland. Yes, it was. Song 2. There you go. In semi-final 1, arguably the toughest semi-final we've ever had, Ari Olafsson with Our Choice. Great singer. Quite smartly dressed, couple of backing singers with him on stage. Not much to the staging though, it has to be said. A very schmaltzy, cheesy, we've heard it all before ballad. 15 points. Not really a surprise. Do I think the weakest song in the entire competition in 2018 finished last? It was one of the weakest, there's no doubt about it. Didn't leave any sort of impression on viewers, on fans, on anybody. So we move on to 2019. Any 0 points in the semi-finals? Again, yes, Iceland received 0 from the public, so I've just discussed that. And that is it. Yes, indeed. There's lots of stats and statistics that I'm trying to keep track of here, so if I stumble over my words a bit, you know why. Tel Aviv 2019. Let me write Portugal 2018 in first, though. That will be ranked very highly by me. So, the 2019 competition. Last place in that grand final was... Oh-ho! It was the United Kingdom. Michael Rice with Bigger Than Us. 11 points. This was crap. It really was pretty damn crap. I didn't mind the song. Still don't mind the song. Again, a not bad song, but not bad just ain't good enough half the time. And Michael came out, I think he was all in black, very casually dressed, and there was nothing to this. It was such a bland performance. It started off in grey, and then we had a bit of colour on the backdrop towards the end, whole bunch of backing singers, one of whom was Salena, the 2002 Estonian representative who's been a backing singer for loads of people over the years. And he sounded all right, but my word, this did not stand out. Plus, we were sandwiched between Norway and Iceland in the running order, so we were absolutely done for before Michael even stepped onto the stage in Tel Aviv that year. Not one of our best efforts. There was a national final, couple of songs, bunch of singers. Holly Tandy was in the national final that year with a different version of this song. Arguably a better version of this song. But there we go. Michael hasn't really done a whole lot since, although he was on American Idol this year, I think, and he did okay for himself. So his career is not over and done with, that's for sure. But he hasn't had any sort of hit in the UK, I can tell you that much. Do I agree with this? Germany were there, Israel were there. I have to say I sort of agree. It did not stand out whatsoever. So I do think one of the right songs finished last. In semi-final 1, did we have any 0 points? No, we didn't. Semi-final 2, yes. Austria received 0 points from the public. That was Panda with Limits. And I liked this. That was a very intimate song. Very pared back. Sparse instrumentation. Very fragile, you know, if you see what I mean. It felt very brittle, this type of song. They did some nice stuff with the lighting. But again, it didn't stand out, did it really? People just felt a bit sleepy listening to this one, I guess. Which sounds harsh, but as I said earlier, Eurovision is a cruel game. Didn't finish last overall in the semi-final, though. That was Ireland. And in the final, we did have 2 0 points. Israel received nothing from the jury. That was Kobi Marimi with Home. And you might remember that one because he welled up at the end and, you know, was beside himself with emotion. That was a super schmaltzy ballad. Absolutely. Very, very much erring on the side of very cheesy. So I can sort of understand why it received 0 points. But music professionals completely dismissing this one may be a tad surprising. And then from the public, Germany got a big fat 0. Of course, that infamous moment when the results were coming in. I'm sorry, Germany 0 points. Yes, this was Sisters with Sister, and they weren't actually sisters. I remember being very harsh about that song. I think I left a comment on the national final performance video on YouTube, which had loads of likes saying, "Don't worry, Germany, every other country's picking the wrong song as well." And I sort of regret saying that because I actually don't mind this song at all nowadays, even though it's nothing particularly special. But there we go. Last overall in 2019 was it Ireland? I think it was. 16 points for Sarah McTurnan, 22. I think it was them. Yes. And I don't mind the Irish entry that year. Quite uplifting. Fairly relaxing to listen to. They went for a comic book look on the backdrop. And there was also a diner-like theme to proceedings, which you may well remember. It was very sort of throwback, cutesy stuff. Vocally, I don't think she was that strong. If anything, she was out of breath. So I can understand why it struggled. But still, 22 is not a bad song. Again, not a bad song, but not bad. Half the time ain't good enough. So where am I putting... let me take a look again here. Where am I putting the UK 2019? I'm going to put it here, I think. It's not a terrific entry, that is for sure. And to be honest, Michael Rice was not the issue. He could sing. He was just let down by a bang average track. Moving on to Rotterdam 2021, the contest's return after no competition the year before because of the pandemic. Last in the final, oh boy, there's plenty to discuss here. Because, of course, 4 countries received 0 from the public, but the only country to receive the double bagel, as you might call it in tennis, 2 zeros, was the United Kingdom. This was James Newman with Embers. Now, James Newman, who's 38 now, he has done absolutely nothing since Eurovision. Which is a bit of a shame, but there we are, because he has had some success as a songwriter, and he's worked with some fairly notable musicians over the years. Embers charted at 47 in the UK, but nobody really voted for this in big numbers, and he received, as I just said, 0 from the jury, 0 from the public. Was that justified? Well, it wasn't brilliant. All in black, very casual, big inflatable trumpets. overhanging the stage. Other people pretending to play the trumpet. Bit of pyro, plenty of flashing lights. It was a good time, but it didn't live long in the memory. And I don't recall anybody really thinking this was going to do well. It was a great example. We have it every year. We have songs like this every year. Who's going to vote for them? You're doing the best job you can. All credit to you. But who's really going to pick up the phone and vote for you? Who's going to vote for that song, really? At the time, I thought Embers is an alright track. But who's really going to vote for this? Very few people was the answer. If we take a look at the semi-final 1, nobody received 0 there. Semi-final 2, the Czech Republic received 0 from the public. That was Benny Christo with Oh My God. Third in the running order, and 23 points in total, but none of them came from the public. That live performance, I can understand why the public weren't keen on it, because it was so lazily performed. Vocally, he was not strong enough. He sounded too quiet. There wasn't really much going on visually. A little bit of choreography. But yeah, it was such a crushing letdown. The song itself, really not a bad song at all. I still listen to it occasionally. But it's almost as if he came out on stage and hadn't had a coffee beforehand. There was no energy or anything to it. I don't know whether he was nervous, but it just sort of fell apart. So I can sort of understand why the Czech Republic struggled with the public in semi-final 2. As for the UK finishing last, here's a question for you. Do you prefer My Last Breath, which would have been the UK's entry in Rotterdam in 2020, or do you prefer Embers? They're two quite different songs. I think I narrowly prefer the 2020 song. Embers. Out of the embers, it's fairly catchy, but also not brilliant at the same time. I'm going to put... This is a very rough list, but I'm going to put the UK 2021 there. Now, of course, before I move on, 4 countries did receive 0 in the public half of the results. Boom, 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 boom. The likes of which we may never see again. The Netherlands, the host nation, Jean-Louis Macroy, Birth of a New Age. The Netherlands went for something quite different. And I definitely prefer Grow, which was the Dutch entry by the same singer the year before. Never got to be on the Eurovision stage, unfortunately. Birth of a New Age was fine, but of course what most people remember about that song is the way it sounded as though he was saying broccoli. Which he wasn't, but it sounded like it, and that's all that people really remember, to be honest. Germany were represented by somebody. Was it Malik Harris? That was the year after. Oh, it was Jendrik. Oh yeah, I Don't Feel Hate. Well, to go from Ben Dolic with Violent Thing to Jendrik with I Don't Feel Hate, that is perhaps the biggest misfire we've had in the past decade when it comes to Eurovision. I mean, that was Germany reaching yet again a new low. Spain, Voy a Quedarme, was it? That was nice. Blas Canto, the big inflatable moon. Didn't stand out much though, did it? And then the United Kingdom I've already mentioned. So, do I agree with James Newman finishing last? I guess. I really thought I was going to disagree more, you know. But actually, I'm agreeing with most of these. Pretty much. Yeah, it wasn't one of the strongest songs. Germany was weaker. Spain wasn't fantastic. Netherlands wasn't brilliant. Belgium, some people found that chronically dull. But yeah, fair enough. The UK last. Let's move on, because this video is just a long, drawn-out mess now. 2022 in Turin. We had a lot of ballads in the grand final, did we not? And last place. Have I mentioned who was last overall in 2021? Did I mention that? This is what I mean. There's so many stats and statistics, I'm forgetting stuff. Who was last overall? Was it Ireland again? No, it was Latvia. Samantha Tina, The Moon is Rising. I have to say that I do sort of agree with that one as well. There was nothing to the staging. Visually, it was all sort of brown and gold, and it looked quite ugly. Samantha Tina, not really the problem. The song, massive letdown. Nothing about it really stood out. There wasn't really much of a memorable hook. Her entry the year before for the cancelled contest wasn't brilliant either. And all these times she'd tried to represent Latvia, and the time she eventually does it, she has this sort of song. Georgia wasn't brilliant either, but let's move swiftly on to Turin. At last, we are there, 2 years ago now. And finishing last in the final was not the United Kingdom for a change, but it was Germany again. This was Malik Harris with Rockstars. Again, very relaxed in the way it was performed. Maybe that's a common theme with songs finishing last at Eurovision. They are performed in a somewhat lackadaisical manner. Maybe that's a current thing, I don't know. They went for a sort of living room look to the performance. You might well remember this. The camera sort of panning around him for 3 minutes pretty much. This didn't stand out much either, but again, it's not a bad song. Was it the weakest? It was one of the weakest. So again, I'm inclined to agree. I can't really argue with it. I didn't like Belgium much, didn't like Switzerland much, didn't like Azerbaijan much, didn't love Australia. But Germany's entry was absolutely one of the more, this sounds harsh, but it absolutely was one of the more throwaway entries in 2022. I can't imagine many people listen to this regularly. Let me see here. Germany 2022. Is it better than that one? Yes. Yes. I'm going to put it here. There we go. Again, the singer, not really the problem. Just let down by a disappointing song. In semi-final 1, no 0 points. Semi-final 2, Azerbaijan qualified thanks to pure jury support. The public had this last with 0. This was Fade to Black by Nadia Rustamli. What a great vocalist. Stairs on stage, a dancer who was sort of thrashing about for 3 minutes. Very tender at times, quite rousing at other points in the track. Have I listened to this much since Eurovision? No, I have not. I think it might be my least favourite of the 2022 contest overall, actually. But no doubt about it, the guy could really sing. And the juries were fairly keen on this one. I don't really know why the public didn't give this at least a point, but there we are. Just forgettable stuff, I guess. I'm repeating myself big time now. In the final, Switzerland received 0 from the public, Germany 0 from the jury. That Swiss entry, which ended up finishing 17th in the end because Switzerland were 12th in the jury vote, saving themselves from finishing way towards the bottom. This was Marius Bear with Boys Do Cry. Again, I'm repeating myself, but this was performed in a fairly relaxed manner. You could say it was like not a great deal of effort was put in to the way that this was presented. White lighting, bit of a smoke machine, trying to make it feel intimate. Very sweet, very pleasant to listen to, I guess, but there just wasn't anything about it that was going to motivate casual viewers, certainly, to vote for this. Other songs stood out far more. And it was absolutely Ukraine's year anyway. Moving on to Liverpool last year. Last in the final was Germany. There's a surprise. This was absolutely not deserved, though, so I am going to put a cross next to this. This was Lord of the Lost, who had a #1 album in Germany last year, I believe. They've had quite a bit of success. This was Blood and Glitter. Really stood out. A very striking-looking group. Red outfits, flames, fire, flashing lights, the whole shebang. Germany trying something different, and it just didn't work. Was it too aggressive for people? Perhaps. Was it too silly for some people? Surely not. Was it the weakest song in the final? I don't know. May Muller's performance for the UK wasn't that fantastic. Didn't really love Serbia much. Ah, dear me. It's interesting because you look at the other songs and you think to yourself, hang on a minute, maybe Germany's entry was the weakest in that grand final. Didn't deserve to finish last, though. Deserved a bit more love. 18 points is what they ended up with. If we take a look at the split results, Germany were last with the jury, 24th of 26 countries with the public. That's above the UK and Spain. No 0 points in sight. Unless we look at semi-final 2, of course, where 2 countries received a big fat 0. Of course, it was a pure public vote. Romania, song 3, San Marino, song 12, Theodore Andre with DJT off and on, and Peaked Jacks with Like an Animal. That Romanian entry was really quite poor. He didn't have a great deal of support, though, from his own broadcaster, which may go some way to explaining why the performance looked pretty shoddy. Wasn't brilliant at all, so I can sort of understand Romania finishing last. It was one of the weakest full stop last year. San Marino finishing last, I can sort of understand that as well. Where were the votes going to come from? Who was going to vote for this? Very few people. It was, I hate to say it, very cruel, but it was DOA. It was absolutely dead on arrival, and I think they probably knew it as well. Semi-final 1 last place was Malta, which was unjustified. But we move on. There's an example, by the way, with Lord of the Lost. That's a song finishing last that wasn't presented in a very relaxed manner. They were really going for it, you know, balls to the wall and everything. In terms of this year, let me write in Germany 2023 here. Oh yeah, Germany 2023. Germany. That's going to go there, I think. Last this year was Norway. Wow, who saw that coming? Whilst we can sometimes take an educated guess as to who's going to finish last, sometimes there is a surprise. 16 points for Gutter and Ulverham, a band who've been together for a quarter of a century. What a great performance it was. Very sort of elemental, lots of flashing lights, bit of smoke, various props on stage, lead singer really going for it, this haunting otherworldly melody, haunting otherworldly vocals. It really was absolutely terrific, and there was a moment in time a few months ago where I thought this was potentially going to win, or at least push for the win. How wrong I was. I feel like a bit of a muppet for even saying it at the time, but I really did not see this finishing last. Nobody was really that keen on it, public or jury. 23rd of 25 nations with the jury, 12 points, and 24th of 25 nations in the public vote, 4 points. Absolutely rubbish. Really very surprising. I'm going to put Norway 2024 there. Really very surprising. Was it the weakest song? It absolutely wasn't. Was it the weakest performance? It absolutely wasn't. Man, I felt sure Norway were going to finish higher than Finland, than the UK, higher than Slovenia. Just unthinkable. And I remember sitting here, you can see it in my reaction video, when I think it was Marlin said Norway had 4 points. It just sort of stunned me temporarily. I couldn't believe it. Why did this song struggle? Was it this particular style of singing? Did a lot of people listen to this and think, okay, she's just shouting at us? Maybe that's what these music professionals thought as well. They should have known better, quite frankly. Really, really very shocking. So I absolutely disagree with that. So if we take a look, over the past decade or so, I would say I slightly more agree with the songs finishing last than disagree. But this year, absolutely, I completely disagree with who finished last. If we take a look at the semi-finals from this year's Malmö staged contest, last overall was Iceland, Herra Björk, the returning Herra Björk after 2010 with Scared of Heights, 3 points. Not really a surprise. There was very little love for this one. Was it the weakest song in semi-final 1? Maybe, maybe not. You could say Moldova and Azerbaijan were. And then semi-final 2, Malta were last, which I completely disagree with. I actually re-watched that performance just the other day, and I thought it was pretty damn strong. But there we are. What are you going to do? Eurovision is a cruel, cruel game. So, in terms of... Let me load that document up. If there's any lag, I do apologise. Bottom to top, this is my ranking. Spain 2017, UK 2019, Austria 2015, Germany 2022, UK 2021, France 2014, Germany 2015, Germany 2016, Germany 2023, Portugal 2018, and Norway 2024. The strongest, best, last placed entry over the past decade. Now, I'm just briefly going to do this massive spreadsheet of mine, one of many, and let's go through my personal last places in the final over the past decade. So in 2014 it's Montenegro, that was Moj Svijet by Sergej Chetkovic, I believe. You had the Skater on stage, nice ballad, bit forgettable. 2015 it was actually Serbia, that was Bojana Stamanov with Beauty Never Lies, which is a top 10 entry at the Eurovision Song Contest. Can you believe that? It doesn't really compute. 2015 was not the strongest year, so maybe it wasn't that surprising Serbia did alright for themselves. Yeah, in another year this wouldn't have been anywhere near the top 10, perhaps. 2016, Finland, which was a personal qualifier for me. That was Sandia with Sing It Away. That opened the first semi-final in Stockholm. Yeah, she really went for it, but it wasn't the most amazing live performance. 2017, it was Manel Navarro with Do It For Your Lover, my personal last place. 2018 was actually Hungary, Vishlat Nyar by AWS. That's surprising to me, and I was the one who put it there. Yeah, absolutely. These rankings need to change. Not that Hungary would be ranked a great deal higher. I really don't mind that song. Yes, it's quite aggressive, but it's not bad. I guess there's just other songs that I prefer. 2019, Poland. That was Fire of Love Palisze by Tulia. That's not a bad song, but again, somebody's got to finish last, unfortunately. 2020 was Poland again. That was Empires by Alicia. Nice ballad. Couldn't rank it any higher. 2021 was Germany, so that was Jendrik. 2022 was Australia, that was Sheldon Riley. Yeah, I can understand why the public weren't really on board with that one, and it was more of a jury song anyway. Sang well though. 2023, Serbia, that was Luke Black, Samo Misa Spava. And then this year, my last place in my final is Luxembourg. Tally with Fighter, but that's not a bad song either. Really not bad. My word, it's such a shame that somebody has to finish last, because more often than not it is not a bad song finishing bottom of the pile. Anyway, this was a messy, ramshackle video once again, wasn't it? Nearly 50 minutes. Oh dear me. Let me know your thoughts on the last placed entries at Eurovision, semi-finals, grand final, whatever it is, over the past decade. Do you agree with the songs that have finished last? Do you completely disagree with some of them? And if you do disagree, who should have finished last instead? I'm interested to know. I'll be back with another Eurovision-related video in the near future. Until then, take care of yourselves, stay safe, apologies if there was any lag, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now. Roll on the football this evening.